Hello folks, hope you're having a good day today. Hey, today I'm going to take a look at another in my series of sort of the October series that I'm dedicating to the Cthulhu Mythos. I'm going to be taking a look today at a Hugo awarded novella in the 80s, in the mid-80s, actually 1986, and this is by Roger Zelazny. And this is going to be basically a very long, epic novella length thing. It's called 24 Views of Mount Fuji, and so forth. I actually own it here in my Cthulhu 2000 anthology that was published by Del Rey. It's been published in at least 7 or 8 places since he's published it initially and so forth. So what I'm going to do for you today is review it, give you a little bit of my take of it and so forth. Again, it was written in '86. It is a part of the Cthulhu Mythos, and it actually won a Hugo Award. There are parts of the Cthulhu Mythos that have won a Hugo Award. Now, typically, the mid-'80s probably isn't going to normally be something I'm going to be exploring as a part of my channel. My channel typically wants to go back into older works. But mid-'80s won a Hugo Award. We're doing a Cthulhu deep dive. I consider this to be, I consider this to be on cue. So we're going to be doing it as a part of my, ongoing deep dive into all things Cthulhu. Now, we'll take a look. What I want to do actually is start with 24 Views of Mount Fuji, and then back up, and then kind of give you more of a synopsis of who Roger Zelazny is, why this work is a great work, and so forth. So normally I'd give you the context first, but this time I'm going to switch it up a little bit for you, change things up. So let's go ahead and start talking. So first of all, this story, basically it's about 50 pages long in my collection here, and so forth. Now this is a little bit of an oversized collection, but it's about 50 pages long. And it took me about 90 minutes to read it the first time, and so forth. I probably read it 4 times now. I just reread it for you just yesterday, so I have it in my mind fresh, and so forth. And basically, it's going to start off with our heroine Mari, and she's going to be moving, and she's going to be at a little space, and she has a book. Now, if you'll know, there's actually 48 views of Mount Fuji by Hokusai, not 24. And so forth. She's got a smaller version of it, and so forth, that has 24 views, and she's going to be starting about it. Each of the views is written as a separate section with a separate heading and so forth. So you'll see Mari, and you'll be following her along as she goes from one to another to another. And she's actually moving around Mount Fuji and wants to see them from these different places and so forth that are part of this story and a part of the culture there, right? And so forth. So she's going to be moving around from place to place to place, and so forth. Now, as she's doing so, she is going to be thinking about herself and so forth. And for the first 4 or 5 of these particular, but it's going to continue on going throughout the story, you're going to see that each of these views of Mount Fuji are going to give you more and more insight as to who Mari is, why she's here, what she's doing, and so forth. It's almost like Roger Zelazny is using these as a spiritual Rorschach, from which each of these 24 views will give you more and more information about who Mari is, and so forth. But you're going to be joining her on a journey. She's going to be followed by people that she's going to be keeping an eye on because she thinks they might be out to get her, and so forth. The first little bit, she's going to seem very conspiratorial and so forth, like she's looking around constantly, like she's expecting to be followed, and so forth. So she's very paranoid, and so forth. Something's happened to her, and so forth. So she's going to be continuing to move about Mount Fuji from place to place to place, joining pilgrims, joining other peoples, and so forth. And then eventually you're going to find out about halfway through the story and so forth who she really is, and so forth. And you're going to find out that she was actually married to this guy who was a big science lover and so forth, and he was able to transform himself into the internet. And so he now lives in the internet and so forth, and Trim wanted to transform her there too. Did so. She got back out because she was pregnant. She didn't tell him that, but she was married to him and so forth. And now she lives off the grid because he's been looking for her and so forth as a person who's in the internet, and he no longer has a soul. So she's going to be trying to figure him out and so forth. And she thinks he may be chasing him now that she's exposed herself from her normal sort of off the grid place to a more. She thinks he may be now following her, chasing her, sending out people, and so forth. Now, some of these people that she's going to be encountering are members of the Cthulhu Mythos. Some of the monks that are following her are going to have webbed hands, very similar to deep ones. There's going to be a mention of Rilya and Cthulhu and so forth in a few different places, and so forth. So it's very clear this is set in the Cthulhu Mythos, but it's not It uses the Cthulhu mythos to flesh out the story. It's not the key parts of the story or anything like that. But anyway, that's the story for you. I'm going to cut it off there because I don't want to spend too much time on reviewing. I don't want to give you like the last half. Figure out what happens to Mari, who actually she is, who the person is, what's been happening behind the scenes, or what's going to end up happening. I'm going to leave that. If you enjoy it, check it out. There's going to be 5 or 6 different collections you can check it out. And I'll actually link you to one of them in the comments below, so that way you can actually take a look at it and see what you think about it. But I want to kind of cut it off there. But what really makes this good is that it's a very different Cthulhu Mythos work. It is a Cthulhu Mythos work, it's very clearly that. But it's very different than a lot of other Cthulhu Mythos works. It's probably one of the most unique Mythos works I've ever read, because it's just so distinct from the other ones. It has some of the horror tropes that you would expect from a Cthulhu Mythos story, but it's not. It's set in the near future, but it's not. It's not a pure science fiction one, like a throwback to some of the earlier H.P. Lovecraft stuff. H.P. Lovecraft began the Cthulhu mythos in the late 20s and so forth. He kind of pushed horror forward when he did so. Horror prior to that was typically concerned more with lower sort of survival or death or something like that on sort of a lower scale. But he kicks it up a notch and pushes it to the next level with this giant scale stuff. Planet-wide horror, and intellectual horror. Nobody cares for us. Nobody's going to help you out. And the more we realize just how bad off we have it, the more mad we're going to go. That there's knowledge man was not meant to know, and that there are all these deities, books, and so forth, with all these hidden secrets that if we were to turn about to them and so forth, we would go mad with the knowledge and so forth. So that's kind of Cthulhu's kind of giant sort of horror. And there are some sub-horrors he'll explore too. But he'll also write a lot of science fiction horror stories set in Cthulhu Mythos that have horror tropes in them too, like The Shadow Out of Time, A Car Out of Space, stuff like that. So he does have a lot of science fiction, although he'll have stuff like the Dunwich horror that's not science fiction. Dunwich horror, as an example, is just pure horror. But The Whisperer in Darkness certainly isn't. The Whisperer in Darkness is very, very science fiction-y, and so forth. As a race from another planet, another galaxy actually has come to colonize a place in New England so they can mine some stuff and then take back home. That's very science fiction. I mean, that's not. But he has horror tropes that are tethered to it too. So Roger Zelazny's work is set in the near future. Does have some science fiction tropes to it. I would label it science fiction horror for that reason, but it's not. It's not like you would do so with some of the other things that are happening. And it does have some technological advances that have happened and so forth too. But again, I wouldn't give it the same sort. It's not The Whisper in Darkness. That's more, or Shadow Out of Time. Shadow Out of Time is probably the most science fiction work that Lovecraft did in the mythos, where somebody is swapping bodies with an alien race that's from, thousands that lived on our planet thousands and thousands of years ago and lives in their city with their mind and so forth, and sees the city as one of them, and interacts with that species, sees that city, lives in that world, and so forth. So I would consider that to probably be the most hardcore science fiction. And this is not that, but it's still, I would overall still consider 24 Views to be a science fiction work, but it's very different. It's not a normal work. It has a lot of sort of tropes that you would expect from, that samurai culture, Japanese culture, and so forth, but not overly so. Like, it feels like somebody who's lived there, not somebody who's misusing it. And that's basically what Roger Zelazny is known for. Roger Zelazny uses myths and mythoses in order to ground his works. And what he'll do is he'll move from work to work. And a good example of that's Lord of Light. This is a mid-60s novel that he wrote that won a Hugo Award that's set on a future colony where people have taken on the aspects of Hindu gods. And our main character is Buddha. And so forth. And you're going to see that in Creatures of Light and Darkness is set with in the Egyptian pantheon. And so forth. You'll see him, one of his first short stories, A Rose for Ecclesiastes, talks heavily about Ecclesiastes and combines it with Martian religion. You'll see this with the Chronicles of Amber, probably the thing he's most well known for, where he creates his own mythos. And it's really the only thing he keeps going back to again and again and again, because he creates his own mythos, the House of Amber, the Amberian universe, and so forth, as a part of that. So that's the only series he's going to keep going back to. But again, in this, he's using the Cthulhu mythos to enrich in the world, and so forth. He uses it sparingly but right. He writes a story that needs to be in the Cthulhu mythos rather than the other way around. He's not writing a mythos story. He's writing a story and then sees the mythos elements as ways to flesh it out and make it more real, make it stronger as a story, and so forth. And that's what he does. He's a mythic writer, and when I say that, that's what I mean. And so forth. So this is kind of him just playing to his beat, and so forth. He'll actually do this again. He'll write a story set from the viewpoint of Jack the Ripper's dog to in A Night in Lonesome October, and that's a great story, by the way. And you can check it out. I've got reviews for many of these things I've been talking about, so forth, if you want to take a look at them, or if you want to take a deep dive into it. But that's who Roger Zelazny is, right? He's this mythic writer and so forth. And this work is such a strong example of that. And this is a master at work. And again, by now he's been writing for 25 years. He's won many Hugos, Nebulas, Stoker Awards. This is an award-winning writer, and he got, like I said, it's a Hugo Award 1986, and so forth. So check it out, and so forth. Have you read it? Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Happy to engage with it further. I didn't give you a very deep review because I want to save my spoilers. Just a little bit and so forth. But I do enjoy this story a lot, and I've read it 4 times as a result. And I'm also happy to share it with you too. Here near the end of this deep dive sort of into Cthulhu Mythos. I may do this again next year, this time too, and do like another maybe 20 or 25 stories for you, and so forth. But I want this to be the last one that I do of the Mythos stories, and I'm done about 2022 for you now, and so forth. So again, this will be my last one that I'm expecting kind of to do for you right after we finished up October, and so forth. So the last story I just did was Neil Gaiman's, who has also just won a Hugo Award for it too, A Study in Emerald. So again, we're going to be moving forward now. Moving forward, we're going to be leaving the Cthulhu Mythos and so forth. So this will be a kind of a coda at the after October to kind of take a look back here in November, and so forth. But thanks again for your time. Hey, if you watched this video today and you liked it, feel free to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be a whole lot more of these sort of reviews to follow. And hey, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I want to thank you so much. We all have such busy days and busy lives and such. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's very humbling, and I really appreciate that. So thanks.